Hello dear students, how are you? Today we will discuss nervous system. It is the primary function of the nervous system to control and coordinate the body. The nervous system is about action and senses. Animals are able to sense what is going on in their surrounding and do something in reaction. It receives information about the outside world through the sense organ, eyes, nose, skin, etc. It enables to remember things and to reason out. It controls all voluntary muscles activities like running, speaking, etc. It regulates several involuntary activities such as breathing, beating of the heart, movement of food through the food pipe, etc. Neuron, the functional unit of nervous system. Neuron is the basic functional unit of the nervous system. A neuron consists of three main parts: cell body, dendrites, axon. Cell body is the largest part containing the nucleus and much of the cytoplasm. The cell body contains cytoplasm, which typically cell organelle and certain granular body called nuclear granules. Dendrites. Dendrites are short branch extensions spreading out from the cell body. They receive stimulus from the environment or from other neurons and carry it towards the cell body. Axon. Each neuron has one axon. An axon is a long fiber that carries impulses away from the cell body. The larger the axon, the faster it transmits the information. The axon ends in a series of small branches called axon terminals. Each branch terminates as a bulb-like structure called synaptic knob, which possesses synaptic vesicle containing chemicals called neurotransmitters. At these terminals, the neuron may make contact with the dendrites of another neurons. The axons of much neurons are covered with a lipid layer known as myelin sheet. The myelin sheet both insulates and axons and speeds up transmissions of action potential through the axon. In the peripheral nervous system, myelin is produced by Schwann cells which surround the axon. The axon may or may not be covered by myelin sheath. Types of neurons. Sensory neurons. They often occur in sense organs and they convey the information towards the central nervous system, brain. They are also called afferent neurons. Motor neurons. They carry the information in form of impulses from the central nervous system to the effector muscles or glands. They are also called afferent neurons, relaying neurons or interneuron. These neurons occur in central nervous system and they serve as a link between sensory and motor neurons. Conduction of nerve impulse. A nerve impulse is an electrical signal that travels from one neuron to another for the passage of message. The transmission of a nerve impulse along a neuron from one end to the other occur as a result of electrical change across the membrane of the neuron. Each neuron receives an impulse and must pass it on to the next neuron and make sure the correct impulse continues on its path. Neurons are not connected with each other in true sense. There occurs a minute gap between terminal portions of an axon of one neuron and the dendrites of another neuron. This minute gap is called synaptic cleft. The nerve impulse in one neuron travels down the axon until it reaches the axon terminal where the synaptic knobs are located. The synaptic knobs are filled with chemicals known as neurotransmitters. The neurotransmitters carries the message across the synapse and passes it to the next neuron. Reflex action. Reflex action, also known as reflex, can be defined as involuntary and nearly instantaneous movement in response to a stimulus. It is an automatic response that occurs very rapidly and without conscious control. For example, we immediately move away our hand when we touch a hot object. Only the spinal cord is involved in carrying out reflex action. They bypass the brain altogether, allowing them to occur very quickly, although the brain receives information about the reflex as it happens. When our hand touches the hot surface, there are the thermoreceptors present in the skins of the hand and they get stimulated. These triggers nerve impulse in an afferent sensory neurons. This neuron transmits the message to the spinal cord. In the spinal cord, the impulse is passed to relay neuron, which in turn passes to the efferent neuron. The efferent neuron transmits the message to the effectors, that is muscle. The arm muscles contracts and pulls the hand away from hot surface. So we can say the part taken by the nerve impulse in a reflex action is known as reflex arc. So there may be some involuntary function and some voluntary function. So let us discuss the central nervous system, because human nervous system has two parts: central nervous system and peripheral nervous system. Central nervous system include brain and the spinal cord, and the peripheral nervous systems has all the nerves from brain, cranial nerves, and from the spinal nerves. Central nervous system consists of the brain and the spinal cord. It is regarded as a thinker or information processor of the body. The brain is the part of the nervous system that integrates the information that it receives and coordinates the activity of all parts of the body. It is like the central information processing organ of our body and acts as the command and control system. The brain performs an incredible number of tasks. Brain is a soft organ resembling a walnut. The human brain is grayish pink jelly-like ball with many ridges and grooves on the surface. The human brain is well protected by the skull. Inside the skull, the brain is covered by cranial meninges consisting of an outer layer called dura mater, a very thin middle layer called arachnoid, and the inner layer called pyometer. These meninges provide protection to the brain. The space between these meninges is filled with a fluid called cerebrospinal fluid. The brain can be divided into three major parts: forebrain, midbrain, hindbrain. Forebrain is the most complex of the three parts. It gives us ability to feel, learn and remember. Separate areas of the forebrains are specialized for hearing, smelling, seeing and so on. The forebrain consists of three parts: cerebrum, thalamus and hypothalamus. The cerebrum, also known as telencephalon, is the largest and the most highly developed part of the human brain. It encompasses about two-thirds of the brain masses. The cerebral is divided into four sections called lobes: the frontal lobe, parietal lobe, occipital lobe and temporal lobe. Frontal lobe is associated with reasoning, planning, parts of speech, movement, emotions and problem solving. Parietal lobe is associated with movement, orientation, recognition, perception of stimuli. Occipital lobe associated with visual processing, and the temporal lobe associated with perceptions and recognition of auditory stimuli, memory and speech. Thalamus has multiple functions, act as a relay station between different subcortical area and cerebral cortex. Hypothalamus, another very important part of the brain called hypothalamus, lies at the base of the thalamus, a small cone-shaped structure. It performs many functions like autonomic function, emotions, endocrine function, homeostasis, motor function, food and water intake, wake sleep cycle. Midbrain is a portion of the central nervous system associated with vision, hearing, motor control, arousal and temperature regulation. The hindbrains make up the lower portion of the brain stem and consist of three units. They are medulla oblongata, pons and cerebellum. Medulla oblongata also called medulla, is the part of the hindbrain that controls the involuntary function such as heartbeat, digestion, and breathing. For example, it controls how a person's heart beat as well as blood pressure, breathing, and even his ability to swallow or cough. Pons. The pons is the part of the hindbrain located above the medulla. It relays messages between the cerebellum and the cerebrum, which is a part of forebrain. It helps control movement and plays a role in sleep. It also serves as a communication and coordination center between the two hemispheres of the brain. Cerebellum. Cerebellum is located to the rear of the brain stem. It coordinates the muscular activity. It maintains equilibrium of the body, helps a person to perform smooth, controlled movement, and controls muscles, tone, and postures. And the spinal cord in human, spinal cord is about 40 to 45 centimeter long in adult man and weight about 35 to 40 grams. The spinal cord is a complex array of bundles of nerves and is protected by the vertebral column, which encloses it. Vertebral column is the collection of bones.